I was pulling wallpaper off the wall in what was supposed to be my son's new bedroom when something strange happened. The corner of the paper tore differently, like it caught on something. I tugged harder, and a thin slit in the drywall opened up just wide enough to reveal the edge of an envelope buried deep behind the wall. At first, I thought it was just old construction junk, maybe a receipt or forgotten insulation paperwork. But when I pulled it free, my entire body froze. The envelope was yellowed, sealed with a red wax stamp, and the handwriting on the front was uneven but purposeful. It said one thing: "If you found this, she's still alive. Your mother never died." I actually laughed out loud. I thought it was some creepy prank from the previous owner. I assumed it had to be fiction, but then I opened it. Inside was a photograph. It was old, printed on paper that curled at the edges. There was a woman in the picture, holding a baby. At first, I didn't understand why it unsettled me so much. And then I noticed the baby's blanket. It had my name stitched into the corner, Marla. I looked back at the woman. She had long black hair tied loosely over one shoulder, almond-shaped eyes, and a faint scar under her chin. She looked exactly like me. Not just a resemblance, she looked like she could be my twin. My heart started racing. I stared at the photo, flipping it over to see if there was a date. Nothing. Just a fading stamp that said, "Processed in 1997. The year I was born. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I sat there, covered in flakes of old wallpaper, holding a letter that said my mother might be alive, and a photo of a woman who looked like me, holding me. That wasn't something you could explain away. I called my dad immediately. I didn't even hesitate. I sent him a photo of the letter and the picture before he picked up. The phone rang twice. He answered with his usual voice. "Hey kiddo, you get the bed frame set up?" "No," I said. "Dad, I need you to look at something. I found a letter in the wall." There was a pause. I kept going. "It says Mom didn't die, that she's still alive. And there's a photo. It's her, right? Or it's me. I don't even know." He didn't respond. The line was quiet for a few seconds, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. "Dad?" I said again. "Are you there?" He let out a slow breath. Then he said the last thing I ever expected to hear from him. "I never wanted you to know the truth." I sat there, stunned. What truth? But he didn't answer. Not right away. He just said, "You need to leave that alone, Marla." I mean it. Nothing good will come from digging up the past. I stood up, pacing. "Are you telling me this isn't a prank? That this letter is real? That she might be alive?" He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. "I did what I had to do," he said finally. "You were just a baby. You don't remember any of it. Let it stay that way." "Dad, you told me she died in a car accident. I've lived my entire life believing that. You made me believe that, and now you're telling me it was all fake?" Another long pause. "I can't do this over the phone," he said. "Please don't go chasing this. Just let it go." He hung up before I could ask anything else. I stood in the room for a long time. The walls around me felt smaller, the air thinner. I looked down at the photo in my hand again. The way the woman held the baby, the way she looked at the camera. That wasn't a staged shot, that was a moment. A real one. A mother holding her child. And the worst part? I felt something inside me that I hadn't felt in years. Hope. The house was supposed to be our fresh start. After the divorce, I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere mine. Not just for me, but for Micah. He was only 3, but already old enough to sense when something was broken. The way he clung to my arm when his father raised his voice. The way he'd hide under the table whenever someone rang the doorbell. I couldn't let that continue. So when I found the little white farmhouse on the edge of Bellwood, Vermont, I didn't hesitate. It was old, needed work, but the bones were solid. It had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen big enough for our weekend pancakes, and a backyard with a worn swing set that reminded me of my childhood. The mortgage was tight, but I made it work. I picked up freelance design work late at night after Micah went to bed, just to make the numbers line up. The first week was all boxes and elbow grease. My dad came up from New Hampshire to help. He arrived like he always did, unannounced, gruff, carrying too many tools and not enough groceries. We didn't talk much about the divorce. We didn't talk much about anything personal, really. That was just how he was. My father, Donovan Hensley, raised me on structure. Early dinners, polished shoes, clear expectations. He was never cruel, but never warm either. "You made a good call with this one," he said, examining the kitchen window frame. "Strong foundation. Needs paint, but she's got potential." "She's a she now?" I asked, smiling. He smirked. "Old houses are always girls. Too much attitude to be anything else." Micah toddled into the room with jam on his fingers and a juice box in his hand. "Grandpa, look, I found a lizard rock." My dad took the dirt-covered stone like it was a golden treasure. "Well, look at that. That's a good sign. Lizard rocks mean good luck." Micah beamed. I stood back and watched the moment. My son, my dad, a new place. And for the first time in months, I let myself feel a sliver of peace. The house wasn't perfect, but it felt like the start of something. We painted Micah's room sky blue. I replaced the bathroom tiles myself, even if they were a little uneven. Every improvement made it feel more like mine, like ours. But despite the fresh start, I still carried the weight of something missing. There were questions I never asked growing up. Not because I didn't want to know, but because I knew I wouldn't get real answers. My mom, Alira, had died when I was 2. That's what I was told. A car accident on a rainy night in upstate New York. The details were always vague. My dad said it wasn't something to talk about. "Too painful," he would say, anytime I brought her up. He kept one picture of her on the mantle, her senior year portrait with soft curls and a distant smile, and that was it. No albums, no home videos, no stories. When I was 9, I asked if I could see her letters or journals. He said he threw everything away after she died. It hurt too much to keep. I believed him. Or maybe I needed to believe him because the alternative was too confusing. That your own parent could erase someone so completely without guilt. Still, the hole never left. When friends at school brought their moms to field day or science fairs, I always felt like I had to smile through something sharp. When other girls talked about borrowing clothes or fighting over makeup, I had nothing to offer. No memories, no stories, just silence. Sometimes I would sit by the window and try to imagine her voice. I'd create entire conversations in my head, imagining what she'd say if she were still here. "You're strong, Marla. Don't let anyone shrink you." That's what I imagined. But it was never more than that, a fantasy. Micah asked about her once. We were reading a picture book where the grandma takes the kids to the zoo. He looked up and said, "Did I ever meet your mom?" I said no. I told him she was in heaven, that she would have loved him. He nodded like he understood, then said, "Do you think she'd like peanut butter toast?" I laughed and said, "Definitely. She'd think you're the coolest toast chef in the world." That was the end of it, until the letter, until the wall cracked open and dropped the weight of the past into my lap. At that point, I had no reason to question the story I'd been told my whole life. I had accepted that I grew up with one parent, that I'd never hear my mother's voice, never see her hands brush my hair, never feel her arms around me. That kind of loss becomes part of your skin. And just like that, one letter, one line written in faded ink, set fire to everything I thought I knew. The day I found the letter, I didn't sleep. After Micah went down for the night, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the photo like it held a secret code. The woman in the picture, her eyes, the tilt of her head, even the small scar beneath her lower lip, matched mine in a way that made me dizzy. I studied the way she held the baby, her arms wrapped around the infant with quiet certainty, her fingers resting against the blanket with gentle pressure. It didn't look like a posed photo. It looked like a moment caught by someone who wasn't supposed to see it. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence. Maybe a cousin I'd never met. Maybe the note was part of some forgotten story, a prank from decades ago. But every time I tried to push the idea away, the photo pulled me back. Deep down, I knew. That woman was my mother, and she was holding me. I picked up my phone and called my dad again. He didn't answer. I texted him 3 times in a row. "Please call me. I need to talk to you. I need to know the truth." It wasn't until the next morning that he showed up. I heard his truck rumble into the driveway around 8. He didn't knock, just opened the screen door and stepped into the kitchen like he always had. He looked tired, more than usual, like he hadn't slept either. He held the photo in his hand. I had left it on the table. "Where exactly did you find this?" he asked, eyes fixed on it. "In Micah's room." Behind the wall, under the wallpaper. He nodded slowly. So she hid it. Dad, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. What is this? Is she alive? He didn't look at me right away. He lowered himself into the chair across from mine and rubbed a hand over his face. I didn't want you to grow up with lies, Marla. I told you what I believed was safest. I leaned forward. You told me she died. You didn't say she left. You didn't say she disappeared. You made it sound like it was over, final. He winced like I had slapped him. Because I thought it was. She left in the middle of the night, took you with her, didn't say where she was going. I didn't hear from her for 3 months. Then I got a letter, just a short note. She said she was safe and that you were okay, and that I should stop looking. I stared at him in disbelief. So she left you, and you told everyone she was dead? He didn't answer right away. Did you lie to the police? I asked. Did you lie to everyone? I reported her missing, he said quietly. She was gone. I didn't know where. I didn't lie to the police. But I stopped pushing after the letter came. When your grandparents asked, I told them she was dead. I thought it would be easier for everyone that way. For who? I asked. For you? He slammed his hand against the table. Not hard, but loud enough to startle me. You were a baby. You needed stability. She didn't want to be found. She didn't want me in your life. I did what I had to do. I stood up. My hands were shaking. You stole her from me. She left, Marla. She walked out. Don't you dare make me the villain when I raised you alone. I took a step back. You let me grieve someone who wasn't dead. You let me believe I was motherless. That changes everything. He stood too, jaw clenched. Number, it doesn't. Because I was there every single day, and she wasn't. We stared at each other in silence. I couldn't stop my voice from cracking. I just want to know what's real. I don't know where she is, he said. I haven't heard from her since that letter. I thought she might be dead, that maybe someone else had written it. I buried it, all of it, because I didn't want you chasing ghosts. I looked back at the photo on the table. My entire body felt heavy. She's not a ghost, I said. She's my mother. That night, after he left, I couldn't focus on anything else. I opened every box of old documents I had. I searched the walls of the house for more hidden letters. I tried to trace the return address on the envelope, but found nothing useful. No names, just a blurred postmark from Maine. Every piece of information I had raised more questions than answers. My father had clearly buried something deep, and he wasn't ready to face what might come out of the dirt. But I was. I had lived my whole life feeling like something was missing. And now I knew I wasn't wrong. I wasn't imagining it. There had been a secret, and I had just pulled the first thread loose. I didn't eat the next morning. I sat at the table, staring at the photo again, the envelope beside it, and the handwritten note that had unraveled everything. The words kept echoing in my head. She's still alive. Your mother never died. I knew I couldn't let this go. I couldn't return to normal and pretend none of this happened. Not when the truth was now breathing down my neck. Not when my son might still have a grandmother out there who had been erased from both of our lives. Micah padded into the room wearing footy pajamas and rubbing his eyes. He climbed into my lap without saying a word. I held him tighter than usual. What's wrong, Mommy? Just thinking, buddy, I whispered. Grown-up stuff. Are you sad? He asked, looking up at me with wide brown eyes. I nodded. A little bit, but I'm okay. That was the moment I made up my mind. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life wondering. I didn't want my son to inherit a legacy of silence and buried secrets. I needed to know who my mother really was. I needed to know why she disappeared. And if there was even the smallest chance she was still alive, I had to find her. I started by taking everything I had and laying it out like a puzzle. The letter, the photo, the postmark. I scanned the envelope again and noticed something I'd missed before. The postmark included a partial zip code and a smudged town name that started with an E. I pulled out my laptop and started checking Maine zip codes, searching for towns that matched. It took an hour, but I found it. Ellensworth, Maine. Population, 2,900. The town barely had a website, just a homepage with a grainy photo of a diner and a faded directory of town officials. But it was a place, a real one. And it was something to start with. I called my dad again, one last time, hoping maybe he'd change his mind. "Marla," he answered, his voice weary. "I found the postmark. It came from Ellensworth. I'm going there." He didn't argue, not this time. "You're not going to find what you're looking for," he said. "I won't know unless I try." He paused. "If she's still alive, she didn't want to be found. She left for a reason." "Then I need to hear it from her," I said. "I deserve that." He let out a slow breath. "Take care of yourself, and take care of Micah." I hung up and packed a small bag, snacks for the road, diapers, pajamas, juice boxes. I called a friend in town and asked her to stop by the house to pick up my mail in case we were gone for more than a few days. Then I buckled Micah into his car seat and pulled out of the driveway. The trip took 6 hours. Vermont to Maine is a beautiful drive in the fall with red and orange trees painting the horizon. But I barely noticed the colors. My hands gripped the wheel tight the entire time. My mind kept flipping through possibilities. Would she be there? What if she was gone again? What if she didn't want to see me? Micah sang songs in the back seat and napped between gas stations. I looked at him through the rearview mirror and felt more sure of my choice with every mile. He deserved to know his history. I did too. We pulled into Ellensworth just after 5 in the evening. The sun was low. The streets were quiet. There was one diner, one gas station, and an old church at the top of the hill. I stopped at the diner and asked the waitress if she recognized the name Alira Hensley. She didn't. I showed her the photo. Still nothing. But the man at the table behind me turned around. "You related to her?" he asked. I looked at him carefully. He was in his 70s, wearing a blue work jacket with paint stains down the sleeve. He looked familiar, in a way I couldn't place. "She's my mother," I said. He stared at me like I had just walked out of a dream. "You look just like her." I stood up. "You knew her?" He nodded. "Alira Lane. That's what she went by here. She used to work at the library. Left town about 20 years ago. Said she needed to keep moving." My stomach tightened. "Lane? That's not her maiden name." "Her father's name was Edward Lane," he said. "Lives just outside town. Big property near the river bend. You might find him there." "Thank you," I said, my voice shaking. I walked back to the car, heart pounding. I opened the back door, kissed Micah on the forehead, and whispered, "We're close, buddy. We're really close." I had no idea what I'd find at the end of the road, but I knew I was going. Because the truth wasn't going to come to me. I had to find it myself. Edward Lane's house sat at the end of a dirt road that twisted through the woods, like a trail someone tried to forget. The tires crunched over gravel as I pulled into a wide clearing. The house was old and weathered, 2 stories high with green paint that had long surrendered to time. A rusted wind chime tapped lightly in the breeze. I turned off the engine. My heart beat so hard I could hear it in my ears. Micah was asleep in the back seat, curled up with his stuffed lion. I didn't wake him. I just sat there for a moment, palms sweating against the steering wheel. Then I stepped out. I walked up the creaking porch steps and knocked once. I heard movement inside, slow, deliberate. The door opened halfway and an elderly man peered out. His hair was white, his face lined with deep creases. His eyes, though, were sharp, alert. "Yes?" I held up the photograph. "Are you Edward Lane?" He didn't answer. He stared at the photo for a long time before his gaze lifted to my face. His expression changed. Not surprise, not confusion, something closer to recognition. "You're Alira's girl," he said. I nodded, my throat tightening. "I'm Marla." He opened the door wider. "Come in." The living room was modest. Framed pictures hung crookedly on the walls, most of them old. There were no photos of my mother, but I didn't ask why yet. I sat on a sunken couch across from him while he poured tea into mismatched mugs. His hands trembled slightly as he carried them over. "She said this day might come," he said as he sat down. "I never knew if it would." "You knew she was alive?" I asked. He nodded. "She came to me after she left your father, stayed here for a few months. Told me not to tell anyone where she was, not even you. Said it was the only way to protect you both. She left because of him, didn't she?" He looked down. "Donovan wasn't always a bad man, but he changed, got angry, controlling. He didn't hit her, not in front of me, but she was afraid. She told me he threatened to take you from her if she ever tried to leave. I felt my jaw tighten. So she disappeared. She left in the middle of the night, took you with her. A few weeks later, she came here, scared, worn down. She told me she was going to create a new life for you, said she couldn't let you grow up in that environment. But she gave me back to him. Edward sighed. He tracked her down, found out where she was. They met once alone. I wasn't there. After that, she left. She didn't say goodbye, just left a note saying you were going back to live with your father. Said it was the only way she could guarantee your safety. She left me, I said softly. No, he replied firmly. She saved you, at a cost to herself. I know it doesn't make it right, but she believed she was protecting you. She asked me to hide that letter in the wall. She said if you ever found it, it meant it was time. Time for what? I asked. To know the truth. I looked around the room again. Where did she go? He shook his head. I don't know, she never told me. Last I heard, she was in Ohio, working under a new name. But she said she might keep moving. She was scared Donovan would come looking again. I sat there, hands in my lap, feeling like the ground beneath me had shifted. My mother hadn't died. She hadn't even abandoned me. She had given up everything so I could have a life she thought was safer than anything she could offer. Edward stood and walked to a drawer. He pulled out a small wooden box and handed it to me. She left this with me, said to give it to you if you ever came. Inside were 3 things: a locket with a tiny picture of her and me when I was a baby, a folded letter in her handwriting, and a pressed daisy, dried and delicate. I opened the letter with shaking hands. My dearest Marla, if you're reading this, it means I was wrong. I hoped you would never have to know what I did, but I knew one day you might come looking. I want you to understand I loved you more than anything. Leaving you was the hardest choice I ever made. I watched you grow up from a distance when I could. I saw your first day of school. I saw you in your prom dress from the shadows. I have always loved you. I never stopped being your mother. Please forgive me. Love always, Mom. I pressed the letter to my chest, eyes full of tears I didn't try to hide. For the first time in my life, I knew she hadn't vanished out of neglect or selfishness. She had sacrificed everything for my safety. And though I didn't know where she was now, I knew she had never stopped loving me. I walked back to the car in silence. Micah was still asleep. I slid into the driver's seat and sat for a long time, holding the locket in my hand. I didn't have the ending I came for, but I had something I never expected, the truth, and it changed everything. I didn't find her. Not in person, not in a room, not standing on a porch waiting to embrace me. But I found her in that letter. I found her in the locket with our picture. I found her in the pressed daisy she must have picked from a garden we once shared, though I was too young to remember it. And that was enough to change me. The drive back from Maine was quiet. Micah colored in the back seat, humming to himself. Every few minutes, he'd hold up a picture and ask, "Do you like this one, Mommy?" I said yes to every single one. I didn't tell him the full story, not yet. He was too young to understand what it meant to lose someone twice and still come away with love. But one day, I will tell him. I'll tell him about his grandmother. I'll tell him she was strong. I'll tell him she made an impossible choice because she believed it was the only way to keep us safe. When we got home, I unpacked the small wooden box from Edward's house and placed it on the mantel. I put the photo in a new frame. I hung it in Micah's room, right where the letter had been hidden. When he asked who the woman was, I told him, "That's my mommy, your grandma." He smiled and said, "She looks like you." I nodded. "She does." The next weekend, I invited my father over. I didn't plan to yell. I didn't want to fight. I wanted honesty. He came, like he always did, with bags of groceries and a quiet, uncertain look. He stood in the kitchen for a long time, watching me cook Micah's pancakes while the cartoons played in the background. "I went to Maine," I said. "I found Edward. I found her letter." He didn't say anything. "I know you were trying to protect me. I know you were afraid, but you lied, Dad. You let me grow up believing she was dead. You buried her." He looked down at his hands. "I thought it was the right thing." "I know," I said, "but it wasn't your choice to make." He nodded once. Then he looked up at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something raw in his face. Regret. Not for what he had done, but for how much it had cost. "I never stopped loving her," he said quietly. "I believe you." We didn't hug. We didn't cry. But we stood in the same room and let the truth exist between us. And somehow, that was enough to start something new. Micah still asks questions. He's curious the way kids are. Sometimes he holds the locket and says, "Do you think Grandma would like me?" I tell him yes. I tell him she would have loved him with her whole heart. Because I believe that now. Not as a dream, but as a fact rooted in everything she left behind. I've started writing things down. Letters to her, letters to myself. I write about the anger, the confusion, the hope. I write about what it feels like to finally understand why something was missing all those years, and how filling that space with truth hurts, but also heals. I haven't stopped searching completely. I've left messages in old forums. I've checked public records, followed vague leads. A woman with a similar name rented an apartment in Columbus 10 years ago. Another one volunteered at a shelter in Akron for 6 months. I don't know if any of them were her, but I've accepted that I may never see her again. She might be gone. Or she might still be out there, living quietly, watching from a distance the way she did before. And if she is, I hope she knows this. I don't hate her. I don't blame her. I understand. She made a decision that fractured everything, but she made it for me. I was too young to remember the pain she carried, too young to understand the fear she lived with, but I'm not too young now. She left behind enough to tell me who she was. She left enough to show me how deeply she loved me. That's what I carry with me now. Not the silence, not the secrets, the truth. It didn't fix everything. It didn't tie up all the loose ends or erase the years of confusion and grief, but it gave me clarity. It gave me peace. And for the first time in my life, I feel whole. Not because I found all the answers, but because I stopped being afraid to ask the questions. Thank you for listening to my story. If this touched you or made you think about your own family, your past, or the power of truth, I hope you'll share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below. I'd love to know what this made you feel, or if you've ever uncovered a secret that changed everything. And if you want more true, personal stories like this, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. There's always more to uncover. And sometimes, sharing a story is how we finally heal.